If you're new to the channel, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life prison stories. And don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps bring these untold stories to life. Now, let's begin. The alarm lights flashed red across Rikers Island's west block. Sirens screamed through the corridors, echoing off the thick concrete walls. Guards shouted over one another, their boots pounding the floor. Inmate on the loose. Lock every unit down now. Somewhere between the chaos, a man named Marcus Reed slipped quietly through a half-open maintenance door, his heart thundering in his chest. The cameras were looping old footage he had set up days ago. His orange jumpsuit was gone, replaced with a janitor's uniform he'd stolen from the laundry. The badge on his chest read R. Harris, and for the first time in 7 years, Marcus walked the hallway as a free man, or at least as someone who looked like one. He kept his head low, pushing a mop bucket down the hallway, every step measured. Behind him, chaos erupted in the cells. Inmates banging on bars, screaming, laughing. They didn't know one of their own had just fooled the system that had caged him for nearly a decade. Marcus approached the staff door leading to the outer compound. A guard he'd memorized, Officer Daniels, stepped into his path. "Where you headed, Harris?" Daniels asked, squinting at him. Marcus froze. For a moment, everything stopped. The sound, the light, even the air. Then, with a calmness that only comes from living years under pressure, he replied, "Pipe burst in the kitchen. Warden said it's flooding near the food storage." Daniels frowned, hesitated, then nodded. "Go ahead, but hurry up, it's chaos out there." Marcus forced a small smile, pushed the mop bucket forward, and passed through the final security door. Behind him, the sirens still wailed, and inside his chest, his heart raced like a drum. He couldn't believe it. His plan was actually working. He was minutes away from the ferry dock that transported staff back to the Bronx. If he could make it there, no one would ever know until it was too late. But as he turned the last corner toward the exit gate, a sharp voice came through the radio on Daniel's belt. "Unit 4, be advised. The escapee is dressed as a janitor." Daniels froze. His eyes widened. Slowly, he turned toward Marcus. "Wait a second," he said, reaching for his gun. Marcus dropped the mop bucket, water spilling across the floor. His eyes darted toward the emergency exit just a few feet away. He had two choices: give up and go back to the cell that had stolen his life, or run and risk everything. Marcus bolted. "Stop right there," Daniel shouted, his voice echoing down the corridor. Marcus hit the exit door, slamming it open as cold air rushed against his face. He sprinted down the narrow path leading to the docks, his lungs burning, his hands shaking. Behind him, more guards burst through the door. Sirens wailed louder, louder, and then a gunshot cracked through the night. The bullet missed him by inches, tearing through the metal railing. Marcus didn't look back. He kept running until his legs gave out. And that's when the spotlight hit him, bright, blinding, like judgment itself. On the ground. Now, Marcus froze, his breath heavy, his hands raised. But instead of dropping, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, something that made the guards hesitate. A key card. The same key card that had unlocked this entire escape. How had an inmate like Marcus Reed gotten his hands on a staff security card? And more importantly, who on the inside had helped him do it? The story of Marcus Reed didn't start with an escape. It started years before, when he realized that in Rikers Island, sometimes the only way to survive was to outsmart the very system that built your cage. Before the escape, before the alarms and the fake uniform, there was just Marcus Reed, inmate number 64872, sitting on the cold floor of cell block D, staring at the peeling paint on the wall. He had been at Rikers for 6 long years, convicted of bank fraud and identity theft. He wasn't violent. He wasn't part of a gang. But he had something that made him dangerous in a different way, a mind that never stopped calculating. Every day, Marcus watched everything. The guard shifts, their routes, the timing of the cameras, even how long it took the janitor to mop the floors between blocks. Most inmates spent their time fighting or sleeping. Marcus spent his time thinking. He didn't just want to survive Rikers. He wanted to beat it. One night, While sitting at the edge of his bunk, Marcus whispered to his cellmate, a quiet man named Tyrone Briggs. "You ever notice the guard at the west corridor?" Marcus asked softly. Tyrone grunted. "Which one?" "The one who plays on his phone during night shift. He leaves the staff door open every time he goes out for a smoke." Tyrone frowned. "You watching guards now?" Marcus smiled faintly. "I'm watching patterns." For weeks, Marcus studied those patterns, when the guards rotated, when the laundry came through, when the cameras glitched. He even timed how long it took for a maintenance request to go through the system. He started working in a laundry room, folding uniforms, cleaning equipment, fixing small machines when they jammed. That's where he met Rico, a short, nervous man with thick glasses who handled inmate work schedules. Rico wasn't a guard. He was a civilian contractor, and he had access to almost every digital record in the building. One afternoon, while fixing a broken dryer, Marcus spoke quietly. "Rico, you ever think this place could run smoother if the system wasn't so old?" Rico laughed. "Tell me about it. Half these machines are from the 90s. The software crashes every week." Marcus nodded, pretending to be casual. "You ever need help with that stuff? I used to do IT work before all this." Rico raised an eyebrow. "You? An inmate?" "Yeah," Marcus said with a half-smile. "Just because I'm an orange doesn't mean I'm dumb." That day was the start of something small, harmless even. Marcus began helping Rico fix data errors in the system. He'd point out mismatched IDs or show him how to reset corrupted files. Nothing illegal, just useful. But Marcus wasn't helping for free. He was learning exactly how the prison's internal database worked, how staff ID cards were tracked, and how the system logged access points. A month later, he found what he needed. The maintenance staff used temporary access cards during system updates, cards that could open multiple sections of the prison and weren't always logged correctly when borrowed. And the man in charge of those cards? Rico. One evening, while the rest of the inmates lined up for count, Marcus leaned closer to Rico as they worked. "What would happen," Marcus asked carefully, "if one of those cards went missing by mistake?" Rico froze. "You trying to get me fired?" Marcus smiled. "No, man. Just thinking out loud. Systems like this, they got holes. You'd be surprised how easy it'd be for someone to slip through." Rico didn't answer. But that night, when Marcus returned to his cell, he knew he had planted the seed. Weeks passed. Nothing happened. Until one morning, Rico came in looking pale, sweating. He whispered, "You didn't hear it from me, but next week they're changing the locks." Something about a lost maintenance card. Marcus stared at him. "Lost?" Rico nodded nervously. That was the confirmation Marcus needed. Someone had misplaced a key card, and he knew exactly where it would end up. He waited until the next day, when the laundry carts came through. He'd arranged it perfectly, a small piece of folded uniform with something heavy tucked inside. The cart rolled past security without question. When it reached Marcus's hands, he opened the bundle. Inside was a staff ID card. Worn, scratched, but real. He closed his fist around it, heart pounding. For the first time in years, Marcus Reed could see a way out. But he also knew something else. Whoever had lost that key card was going to notice very soon. And when they did, the walls of Rikers would start closing in faster than ever. For the next few days, Marcus barely slept. The key card was hidden beneath a loose tile under his bunk, a secret he guarded with his life. Every sound in the hallway made him flinch. Every time a guard walked past, he thought it was over. But no one came for him. Not yet. The day the lost key card was officially reported missing, the entire prison went into a short lockdown. Guards searched cells at random, checking uniforms, drawers, and even under mattresses. Marcus sat calmly on his bunk, reading an old paperback novel, pretending to be bored. When the guards reached his cell, Officer Daniels, the same one who would later chase him down the hallway, looked at Marcus suspiciously. "You've been keeping your nose clean, Reed?" Daniels asked. Marcus smiled slightly. "Just counting the days, sir." Daniels snorted. "You got plenty left to count." They searched every inch of the cell, except the one tile Marcus had carefully resealed with soap residue and dust, making it blend perfectly with the others. When they left, Marcus finally exhaled, his hands trembling just slightly. He knew now that time was against him. The keycard wouldn't stay useful for long. Once the system update happened, it would be deactivated. He needed to move soon, but not without a plan that guaranteed success. So Marcus started building his plan from the inside out. He began volunteering for every maintenance-related task available: laundry runs, hallway cleaning, trash duty. The guards didn't question it. A quiet inmate who wanted to stay busy was easier to manage than one who caused trouble. He learned which doors stayed unlocked longer than others, which ones had cameras pointed directly at them, and which blind spots were never reviewed because of technical glitches. But the biggest risk was trust. Marcus couldn't do it alone. He needed one person, just one, who could help him pull it off without asking questions. That person was Tyrone. At first, Tyrone thought Marcus was crazy. "You're talking about escaping Rikers, man. You know how many people tried that and got buried here?" Marcus looked him dead in the eye. "Yeah, but none of them did it with brains instead of muscle." Tyrone shook his head. "Even if you got out of the block, you got the yard, the cameras, the ferry checkpoint." "I know," Marcus interrupted. "That's why I'm not escaping from a yard." Tyrone frowned. "Then how?" Marcus leaned closer and whispered from the inside. Over the next few nights, while the rest of the inmates slept, Marcus explained the plan in low tones. He had mapped every shift rotation, every access point the keycard could open, and the exact moment the ferry staff would change over. The idea was simple: walk out like you belong there. No running, no alarms, just calm, confident movement. He would disguise himself as a janitor, one of the few workers who could move between sectors unnoticed. The only problem was getting a uniform that fit. That's where Tyrone came in. Tyrone worked part-time in the laundry too, and he knew the schedule for uniform deliveries. On Fridays, they were cleaned, folded, and transported to the storage closet near the west corridor. Marcus needed one of those sets, plus a name badge. It took them 2 weeks. 2 weeks of waiting, watching, pretending nothing unusual was happening. Then, one rainy night, while the storm raged outside, Tyrone slipped a bundle under Marcus's bunk. Inside was a faded janitor uniform, blue, with a small patch on the chest that read R. Harris. Marcus ran his fingers over the fabric, his pulse racing. "You did good," he whispered. Tyrone nodded nervously. "You sure about this?" Marcus looked up at him. This place wasn't built to hold smart men forever. The next morning, Marcus woke up early. He shaved clean, fixed his hair, and tucked the stolen badge into his pocket. The key card rested against his chest, hidden under his shirt. When the bell rang for work duty, Marcus took a deep breath and walked toward the hallway, like it was any other day. The guards barely glanced at him as he passed. He was invisible, exactly how he wanted to be. But as he rounded the corner toward the west corridor, he froze. Officer Daniels was standing by the staff door, talking into his radio, his brow furrowed. He looked tense, like something was wrong. Marcus's heart dropped. Had they discovered the keycard's location? Did they know it was him? Daniels turned slightly, scanning the hallway. His eyes brushed past Marcus for a split second, then stopped. He stared. Marcus forced himself to keep moving, pushing the mop bucket like he'd done 100 times before. Daniels took one slow step forward. "Hey, hold up. What's your name again?" Marcus's mind spun for an answer. If he said the wrong thing, it would all be over. He tightened his grip on the mop handle and smiled calmly. "R. Harris, sir. Maintenance." Daniel stared for a long moment, then nodded. "Carry on." Marcus walked past him, his back slick with sweat. He had just passed the most dangerous checkpoint in the entire prison. But what Marcus didn't know was that Daniels had already made a call, a quiet one, to the security office. "Hey, check something for me. Do we got a janitor named R. Harris on today's roster?" There was a pause. Then, over the radio came the reply. "Negative. No one by that name scheduled this shift." Daniel's eyes narrowed. And that was the moment Marcus Reed's perfect plan began to unravel. The sound of Daniel's voice over the radio sent a chill through the control room. Within minutes, guards started moving, quiet at first, then faster, sharper, like a storm brewing behind steel doors. But Marcus didn't know any of that yet. He was already in the lower corridor, pushing the mop bucket toward the service tunnel that led to the staff dock. His mind was calm, focused. Every second mattered. He swiped the key card at the checkpoint door. Beep. The small green light flashed, and the lock clicked open. He allowed himself a small smile. "Still works?" he muttered. But just as he started forward, a faint echo followed him down the corridor. Voices. 2, maybe 3 guards coming from the other end. Marcus ducked into a side room, closing the door halfway. His heart thudded so hard he could hear it in his ears. Through the crack, he saw flashlights slicing across the hallway. "Control says someone's using a stolen maintenance card," one guard said. "Lock down this section." Marcus clenched his jaw. He was running out of time. He needed a move now. He looked around the small storage room. It smelled like bleach and rust. Shelves lined the walls with cleaning supplies, rags, and buckets. Then his eyes caught something hanging by the window, a maintenance access cover leading to the old duct system. It was barely wide enough for a man to fit, but it was his only chance. He climbed onto the shelf, pulled the cover off, and crawled into the dark tunnel. The metal groaned beneath his weight. Every movement echoed. "Hey, I heard something," a voice shouted from below. Marcus froze. Light beams hit the wall just beneath the opening. He pressed his hand against his chest, feeling the key card under his shirt. This was it. Either he kept going or he'd be dragged back in chains. He crawled faster. The tunnel was hot, narrow, and smelled of dust and metal. Sweat ran down his face. His knees scraped against the edges as he pushed forward. After what felt like forever, he reached a vent that overlooked the loading dock. Through the slits, he saw 2 janitors talking beside a stack of crates, the ferry horn echoing faintly in the distance. He was right there. Marcus unscrewed the vent quietly and slid it open. He waited for the janitors to walk away, then dropped down behind the crates. The floor was wet, slick with rainwater that had blown in through the open door. He quickly adjusted his uniform and grabbed a mop from a nearby rack to blend in. A guard passed by, nodded at him, and kept walking. Marcus didn't even breathe until the man disappeared. Then he saw it, the ferry boat rocking gently at the dock, its lights glowing through the rain. It was nearly time for departure. He started walking toward it, steady and slow. But as he reached the metal gate that led to the dock, a deep voice behind him said, "Hold up, you got ID." Marcus turned. It was Officer Daniels. His uniform was soaked from the rain, his face tense and unreadable. Marcus forced a smile. "Yeah, right here," he said, pulling out the key card. Daniels took it and looked at it carefully. "Funny thing," he said, squinting at the plastic. "This card was reported missing 2 days ago." Marcus's stomach dropped. Daniels looked him dead in the eyes. "You want to tell me how you ended up with it, Mr. Harris?" For a moment, neither of them moved. The rain hammered the dock roof, thunder rolled overhead, and the ferry's horn blared one long, low note. Marcus knew what was coming next. If he didn't act now, it was over. He glanced past Daniels. The gate was still open, the ferry just a few feet away. Then he did something no one expected. He smiled. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," he said softly. Daniels frowned, confused. "Try me." Marcus took one slow step backward, then slammed his shoulder into Daniels, knocking the guard off balance. The key card flew from his hand, clattering across the dock. Daniels shouted, grabbing his radio. "Control, I got." But Marcus was already running, sprinting through the rain toward the ferry ramp. His shoes slipped on the wet metal, his lungs burning. Guards yelled from behind, sirens wailing again. He reached the edge of the dock just as the ferry started pulling away. "Marcus, stop!" Daniel shouted. Marcus turned, breathing hard, rain streaking down his face. He looked at the boat, then at the black water below. It was now or never. He backed up 2 steps and jumped. The cold water swallowed him whole, dragging him under. The guards rushed to the edge, shining flashlights into the dark waves. "Do you see him?" one yelled. "Nothing. The current's too strong." Daniels scanned the surface, jaw clenched. He can't have gone far. But deep below, Marcus fought against the current, kicking toward the ferry's underside. His fingers brushed metal, the lower beam of the ship. He grabbed hold, lungs screaming for air. Then, with one last desperate pull, he disappeared into the shadows beneath the ferry. The water rippled once, then went still. Daniel stared at the dark river, his radio crackling with static. "Do we have eyes on the suspect?" He hesitated, eyes narrowing. "Negative, he's gone." But as the ferry pulled farther from the dock, none of them noticed the faint sound of metal scraping, a hatch opening underneath. Marcus Reed wasn't gone. He was on board. The hum of the ferry's engine vibrated through the metal floor as Marcus clung to the undercarriage, gasping for breath. His arms burned, his fingers numb from the icy water. Every wave threatened to pull him loose, but he held on, because this was the moment he had dreamed about for years. Above him, he could hear the muffled chatter of guards and staff. Someone laughed, someone else cursed about the rain. They had no idea that the man they were hunting was right beneath their feet. Marcus pulled himself up toward a small inspection hatch. It was bolted, but the metal was rusted. He wedged a piece of broken railing between the gap and forced it open just enough to slip through. The hatch screeched softly, too soft to be heard over the storm. He crawled into the narrow compartment under the deck, dripping wet, shaking but alive. He sat there in the dark for a few minutes, catching his breath, his heart racing so fast it hurt. His mind was spinning. He had done it. He had outsmarted Rikers Island, the guards, and the system that told him he'd never walk free again. But he knew it wasn't over. The ferry was heading for the Bronx side of the East River. Once they docked, he'd have to blend in and vanish before anyone realized what had happened. He looked down at his uniform, blue, soaked, and stained with oil. The name tag, R. Harris, still clung to his chest. He knew he couldn't walk off the ferry like this. He needed another disguise. That's when he heard footsteps, heavy ones, coming closer. Marcus flattened himself against the wall, holding his breath. The footsteps stopped right outside the compartment. The door handle jiggled. "Hey, something smells off down here," a voice said. "Probably a leak or something." Another voice answered, "We'll check it when we dock." "Let's go." The footsteps faded. Marcus exhaled shakily. That was too close. He waited for 10 more minutes, listening. When he was sure the coast was clear, he crawled up the access ladder toward the main deck. The hatch above creaked as he pushed it open just a little, enough to peek through. The ferry crew were busy tying down ropes, preparing to dock. Through the rain-streaked windows, Marcus saw the Bronx skyline glowing faintly in the distance. He was almost there. When the ferry bumped the pier, the crew disembarked first. Marcus waited, heart pounding. The guards at the dock were checking IDs as people exited, but no one was looking behind them. No one ever did. He spotted a large laundry bin near the back of the deck, overflowing with wet towels and uniforms. Perfect. He climbed out silently and slid into the bin, pulling a few towels over himself. The air smelled like detergent and rust, but he didn't care. A few minutes later, a worker began rolling the bin toward the dock ramp. "Man, this storm's a mess," the worker grumbled. "Hope I'm done after this." Marcus stayed perfectly still as the wheels rattled over the metal. Rain splashed against the tarp covering the bin. He could hear the muffled voices of security officers checking passes. "Laundry for the admin building," the workers said. "All right, go ahead," one of the guards replied. The bin rolled forward, off the ferry, onto solid ground. Marcus's heart leapt. He had done it. He was off Rikers Island. The worker wheeled the bin into a small storage area near the dock and walked away. The moment the door clicked shut, Marcus pushed the towels aside and climbed out. He stood there for a second, breathing heavily, looking around the dim room. Old cleaning supplies, empty crates, a stack of gray uniforms folded on a shelf. He stripped off his janitor uniform, replacing it with one of the gray outfits. It was too big, but it made him look like a regular dock worker. He found a black hoodie in a supply box and threw it on, covering his face with the hood. When he finally stepped outside, the cold air hit him like a wave of freedom. For the first time in years, there were no bars, no guards, no shouts, just the distant city lights and the sound of traffic. He took a long breath and whispered, "I did it." But even as the words left his mouth, a faint alarm began to wail in the distance. A voice crackled through a nearby radio on a security van. "Attention all units. Suspect Marcus Reed may have boarded the maintenance ferry. Lock down all surrounding piers and checkpoints immediately. Marcus froze. The hunt had already begun. He looked left, toward the dark alleys of the industrial district, and right, toward the main road, glowing with streetlights. He didn't have time to think. He ran. His shoes slapped the wet pavement as he darted between shipping containers, his breath forming white clouds in the cold air. Behind him, voices shouted orders. Flashlights cut through the rain. Marcus ducked behind a dumpster, chest heaving. He needed to disappear fast. That's when he saw it, a delivery truck idling nearby, engine running, back door open. He sprinted toward it and climbed in, closing the door just as the guard's flashlights swept across the street. The truck rumbled forward, merging onto the main road. Marcus sat in the darkness, dripping and shivering, his heart pounding with the rhythm of the engine. He had escaped Rikers Island. But now he was a fugitive in the middle of New York City, hunted, desperate, and one wrong move away from losing everything. As the truck drove into the night, Marcus whispered to himself, "They built this system to trap me, but I learned how to beat it." What he didn't know was that the system wasn't done fighting back, and his freedom was about to come with a price he never expected. The lights of Rikers flickered that night like they always did, tired, yellow, and buzzing against the metal walls. Marcus sat on his bunk, staring at the sealed envelope he had just finished writing. His hands trembled slightly. Inside was his final move, the letter that could change everything. For months, he had played both sides. The system thought he was a compliant inmate. The inmates thought he was harmless. But Marcus had been collecting everything: conversations, guard schedules, paperwork, even overheard confessions. All those nights pretending to be asleep, all those fake smiles and yes, sir answers, they were part of his game. Now, his masterpiece was complete. He had proof that the guard who framed him had stolen evidence and forged his confession. And not just that, he had linked it to a ring of corrupt officers who had been manipulating cases for years. The kind of revelation that could shake the whole island. He folded the letter carefully and handed it to Officer Ramirez, the only guard he truly trusted. "Make sure this gets to the DA's office first thing in the morning," Marcus said softly. Ramirez nodded. "You sure about this, kid?" Marcus smiled faintly. It's time the system outsmarted itself. That night, as the prison quieted, Marcus lay on his bunk, his mind racing. For the first time in years, he wasn't scared. He felt something different: control. The next morning, chaos erupted. Investigators stormed the island. Officers were called in for questioning. Word spread through the cell blocks like wildfire. Someone had exposed the corruption. When they came from Marcus, every inmate watched silently. No one knew whether he was being taken to solitary or freedom. But as he walked past the cells, a few prisoners nodded respectfully. One even whispered, "You did it, man. You beat them." A week later, news broke that the charges against Marcus were dropped. The evidence he uncovered had forced the department to reopen several old cases. Rikers Island, once his cage, had become the stage where he flipped the game. Months later, Marcus sat on a quiet park bench in Brooklyn, staring at the skyline. The city felt new, louder, brighter, freer. He wasn't the same man who'd entered Rikers. He'd faced the worst and walked out not just alive, but victorious. A reporter once asked him, "How did you manage to outsmart the system?" Marcus smiled and said, "You don't fight the system with anger. You fight it with intelligence." He stood, slipping his hands into his jacket pockets, and walked away into the crowd, not as an ex-convict, but as the man who made Rikers Island question itself. If you found Marcus's story powerful, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more unbelievable true stories from inside Rikers Island and beyond. Your support keeps us bringing real stories to light, stories of survival, truth, and redemption. Comment below what part of Marcus's story shocked you the most. And remember, sometimes the smartest move isn't breaking free, it's breaking the system.